How you doing there? Welcome back to Babble on Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Memches, Daf 48, Daf Moyach. Oh, Daf brain. Okay, Daf brain of Masechta Menachos. Well, Daf Memches, Daf 48. What can I tell you about Daf 48? We are continuing our spelunk into kivsei, atzeres, and shtei halechems. Ooh, I still have my... Right, that's great. I still have my big, bold shtei halechem kivsei atzeres set. Oh, let me make the font nice and big. Oh, that's big. All right, that way I'll remember shtei halechem and kivsei atzeres. Won't have to confuse them. Chevra, 3 topics on today's daf. Number 1, 2 kivsei atzeres for 4 shtei halechem. What can I tell you? This is the sugya that we're in. When you have 2 kivsei atzeres, as you should, but 4 shtei halechems, what do? Okay. Next, 4 kivsei atzeres for 2 shtei halechems. What do? And slaughtering kivsei atzeres shelo lishmah, is it kosher? Is it not kosher? It's a machlokes. Friends, let's jump into Daf Memches of Masechta Menachos. Friends, we begin all the way at the bottom of Daf Mem Zayin Amid Beis, 2 lines from the bottom. Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Shachat shnei kvasim al arba chales. Okay, so a person slaughters 2 kivsei atzeres. Let me pull up my bold words: kivsei atzeres and shtei halechem. So a person slaughtered 2 kivsei atzeres, but there are 4 shtei halechems. Maybe technically 2 shtei halechems, but 4 breads. Moshech shtayim me'en umanifon. Okay, so he takes 2 of the kivsei, the 2 of the shtei halechems, and he does tenufa with them. Now you might be wondering, I thought that the tenufa was while the kivsei atzeres were still alive. That's correct. There's different sections, I think, of the tenufa. Again, we're going to get to the tenufa of the kivsei atzeres in about 2 weeks from now, and hopefully all of our questions will be answered. Yeah, it seems like it's a very finicky, very kind of detailed kind of thing. Anyways, but so we're talking about, as Rashi points out here on the bottom, the kivsei atzeres tun tenufa chaim v'shchutin, that the tenufa of the kivsei atzeres is while they are both alive as well as post-alive. Now, so what happens is you have the kivsei atzeres, and you have these 4 breads. Now, of course, the kivsei atzeres are really supposed to, you have 2 kivsei atzeres, you have 2 breads, shtei halechem, 2 breads. Now, but here you have 4 breads. So the kivsei atzeres, first of all, they're already slaughtered, okay? And they're really only going to be good for 2 out of the 4 breads. So what do, friends? That's the question. What do? 2 kivsei atzeres, 4 breads, kilu, 2 shtei halechems, so to speak, like a double shtei halechem. You only need 1 of them. What do? So the Brisa says what you do is moshech shtayim me'en. So take 2 of the breads. So you have the kivsei atzeres that you've already slaughtered, and now you take 2 of the breads, umanifon, and you do tenufa with those 2 breads. V'ashar necholos bepidyon. Okay. And the other 2 breads you will be podeh and eat them. Because as we know, all 4 of the breads would be at least kedushas damim, would at least have monetary hektish, and you would just simply transfer their kedusha into money, and then they become chulin. And so you take 2 of the breads and you do tenufa with them, and then you'll do zrikas hadam on the kivsei atzeres, and you will then be mutter to eat those 2 breads, and the other 2 breads will be kedushas damim, which you will be podeh them, and then they will become chulin, and you will eat those breads. Okay, now, Amar Rabbanan Kame de Rav Chizde, the rabbis said this before Rav Chizde, Hadilo ki Rebbe. This brisa must not be like Rebbe. Let us remind ourselves the machlokas between Rebbe and Reb Elazar Reb Shimon, because that is coming up right now. We need to know what that is in order to be able to talk about this sugya. Rebbe's opinion is that when there is shchita, if you have shchita, that shchita alone is enough to make the kivsei atzeres kadosh, right? Kadosh ve'enu kadosh. right, makes it enough to be at least kadosh. According to Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon, the shchita alone does jack diddly squat. Jack diddly squat. According to Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon, you need the shchita and the zrika in order for the shtei halechem to be kadosh. Which means that after the shchita, right, and we're talking about post shchita, right? We're talking about shochat shnei kvasim, that he slaughtered the kivsei atzeres. So we're talking about post shchita. According to Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon, the shtei halechem are still just kedushas damim. There's no kedushas haguf bichlal, according to Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon. So all four of them are kedushas damim. According to Rebbe, however, already after the shchita, 2 of the 4 would be kadosh with kedushas haguf, which kind of creates a bit of a mess. According to Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon, it's easy. According to Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon, so what? So we slaughtered the kivsei atzeres. All 4 of the breads are still kedushas damim. There's no kedushas haguf. So easy. You have 4 of these breads. They're all the same. They're all kedushas damim. So just take 2 of them. Do tenufa, do zrikas hadam for the kivsei atzeres properly, and those 2 that you did tenufa with will be your kivsei, your shtei halechem, and they will now, because you did the zrikas hadam of the kivsei atzeres properly, the 2 that you designated as the shtei halechem will be mutter for the kohanim, and the other 2 you will simply be poda them, and then you will be able to eat those as well. Nice and easy, nice and simple. Everything is pretty straightforward. According to Rebbe, however, it's more complicated, because according to Rebbe, who says that the shchita of the kivsei atzeres was memele made 2 of the 4 breads kadosh with kedushas haguf. Let's assume like Rav, it's easier to reason about if it's just, with Rebbe also, even according to Abaye, it works, but with Rav, it's just kind of easier to understand, right? He says that, right, that a mamish gets kadosh with kedushas haguf even after the shchita. So according to Rebbe, that after the shchita of the kivsei atzeres, 2 of the 4 breads are kadosh with kedushas haguf. Which 2? Chveis nicht. How is anybody supposed to know 2 of them? We don't know which 2. So now 2 of them are kadosh, 2 of them are not kadosh with kedushas. So which 2 are you going to take in order to do the tenufa, right? So how are you going to move forward with this? So how do you know what to do? How do you know which one's to eat? How do you know which one's to be poded? So what you could do is technically you could say, okay, I'm going to be poded 2 of the breads, whichever 2 of the breads are, right? So meaning you could say, look, here are these 4 breads. 2 of them are already kadosh kedushas haguf. The 2 that are kadosh kedushas damim are going to become chulin on this money. So now those 2 breads become chulin. You do the zrikas hadam, and the other 2 now become mutter as well. And you can eat all of them. The question is now, what does the Gemara say? The Rebbe kaven the Omer shchita mekadsha. Since Rebbe says that the shchita of the kivsei atzeres will memele be mekadesh 2 of the breads as kedushas damim, the parik luhecha, where are you going to be podeh the 2 that are kadosh with kedushas damim? Right? Because you have these 4 breads, right? 2 of them are kadosh kedushas haguf. We don't know which 2 they are. 2 of them are kadosh kedushas damim, so we have to transfer the kedusha of 2 of them. We don't know which ones, but we'll just have to say whichever 2 are kadosh with kedushas damim, their kedusha should be transferred to this money, and now they become chulin. But where are you going to do this? What's the problem? Well, if you take off, again, we don't know which 2 breads they are, so we have to take off. If we take them out of the azar, we have to take all 4 breads out of the azar. So the 2 that are kadosh kedushas damim, no big deal. You take them out of the azar, but 2 of them are kadosh kedushas haguf. You can't take it out of the azar; they'll be possible biyotze. Okay, so let's do it in the azar. But if you're doing it in the azar, then then the 2 that are kadosh kedushas damim, you're transferring the value onto money. They become chulin. How can you have chulin in the azar? So according to Rebbe, it's much trickier. According to Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon, it's much easier. It's all just kedushas damim. You could potentially, I don't know, maybe take them out of the azar and transfer the value of 2 of them onto money, and then they become chulin outside of the azar, and then you kind of go back into the azar and do the tenufa and zrikas dam and everything on the other 2. It's much easier, or just whatever, you do the Tenufa and the Zrikas Adam with two of them, and then the other two you can take out of the Azara and you just point it out of the Azara. It's much easier according to Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon. According to Rebbe, there's a lot more questions. If you're going to take all four breads outside of the Azara to be poda the two that are Kedushas Damim, since it says by the shtei halechem, by the kivsei atzeres, by the shtei halechem, lifnei Hashem, that is before the Ribono Shel Olam. If salu biyotze, they would become puzzle if they're taken out of the Azara. They have to be before God, not away from God. Igavoy, and if you're going to be podeh the two kedushas damim breads inside of the Azara, hama'ayil chulin Azara. You can't bring chulin into the Azara. How can you be podeh those two breads in the Azar? Now they're going to become chulin. You can't have chulin in the Azar. Omar, so therefore, the Talmidim of Rav Chizda, the students of Rav Chizda, argued that this brisa pashut can't be like Rebbe. It's too complicated. It's a mess. It must be Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon. Omilu Rav Chizda. Rav Chizda says to the Talmidim, La'olim Rebbe, I could say that it really is, that this brisa is like Rebbe. Ufariklu Gavoy, and the shtei halechem are being poded in the Azara. But you said, how can you have chulin in the Azara? The chulin memelo kahavyon. You can have chulin in the Azara because you're not bringing chulin into the Azara. The breads, when they were kadosh, were already in the Azara. You were then just poded them, but they were already in the Azara. It's not like you took chulin into the Azara. You had breads that were already in the Azara and were allowed to be in the Azara, that then became, you were poded them and they became chulin, but you're not bringing chulin into the Azara, so it's okay. Says Ravina to Ravashi Vatanabu, we learn in the Brisa Kishu podon in podon ela bachutz, but we have a Brisa that says that the pigeon of the Kedushas Damim breads is outside of the Azara, not in the Azara. Yeah, that one is for sure going. Yeah, that little shtickle, that Brisa is for sure going to have to be Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon, who's saying that the pigeon is outside of the Azara. To eat Rebbe, because if it's Rebbe, ha'ifsalu lehu biyotze, since we don't know which ones are the ones that are Kedushas Guf and which are the ones that are Kedushas Damim, we'd have to take all four of them outside that Azara, and the Kedushas Guf ones would become Tami Apostle biyotze. Ravashi says, let's say that our sugya over here, where we say that two of the four breads become kadosh with kedushas aguf and two of them don't, would be a kasha and Rabbi Yochanan me'od itmar from the following machloikes that features Rabbi Yochanan. Toda sheshachato al shmonim chalis, a korban toda, which normally a korban toda is 40 breads, but this particular fellow had 80 breads. Chizkiah Amar Kachu Arbay Mitoch Shmenim. So says Chizkiah, 40 of the 80 become kadosh, just like over here, 2 of the 4 became kadosh. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Lo Kidchu Arbay Mitoch Shmonim. Period. Whereas Rabbi Yochanan says that 40 of 80 do not become kadosh. So it would sound like our Bryce over here, which is saying 2 of the 4 breads become kadosh, kedushas aguf. So that would sound like Chizkiah, who says that 40 of the 80 Toda loaves become kadosh. Unlike Rabbi Yochanan, who says that they don't become kadosh. But one second, don't we teach about that Toda situation? Amar Abzera says, Abzera, everybody ever agrees, that even Rabbi Yochanan would agree that if he says that 40 of the 80 should become kadosh, that 40 of the 80 will become kadosh. So Achanam, you could say here as well in our Brisa, that he said that 2 of the 4 should become kadosh, and then that could be even like Reb Yochanan as well. Friends, we're now moving on to the next section of the daf. 4 kivsei atzeres for 2 shtei halechems. Woo! Yeah. Tani Reb Chanina Tirasa. Reb Chanina Tirasa taught, coming to Rabbi Yochanan before Rabbi Yochanan. Shachad arba o kvasim. Okay, so 4 kivsei atzeres were slaughtered. Al beis chalas for two for 2 breads, shtei halechem. For sheep, 2 breads. Okay. So Moshech shnayim me'en v'zar damim shelo lishman. You hear the suggestion over here? That you'll take 2 of the, so you have 4 of these kivsei atzeres. Now, let me get back my bold words over here. I just toggled back to the slides. Now I'm back to the bold words. I keep on going back to the shtei halechem, kivsei atzeres. Keep those front of mind. So you hear the very interesting suggestion over here. There are 4 kivsei atzeres in this scenario. We only, of course, need 2. Now, if the first 2 you do zrikas adam l'shem kivsei atzeres, well, you already yotze kivsei atzeres. The other 2 become redundant. We don't need the other 2 anymore. So now what do? You basically have to burn. There's nothing to do with them. But what you can do is, of course, we know from the first Mishnah Masechta Zvachim, Kol Zvachim shenizbechu shelo lishman ksherin, chutz michatos and korban pesach. So basically, these kivsei atzeres just do the zrikas adam shelo lishma. It'll be'etzim just be a shlom. You could just do it like regular shlom, and the korban will still be kosher. Won't count. It won't count as the kivsei atzeres. So then the next 2 you'll do as the kivsei atzeres. And that way you could salvage all 4 animals. You don't have to throw 2 of them in the garbage. Again, Tani Reb Chanina tirasa kamei de Reb Yechanan shachar arba'ya kvasim al beis chalis. If 4 sheep were slaughtered for 2 breads, so you have 2 extra sheep. So Moshe Shnayim man, take 2 of the 4 sheep. V'zarek daman shelo lishman. Do zrikas adam shelo lishman. Shem'i'at omeka. Because if you don't do this, if you do the zrikas adam lishma properly, well then if sates achronim, you're gonna lose. You're gonna have to throw out the other 2 because they're extra. They're pointless. But if you do the zrikas adam shelo lishmo first time around, well, okay, well it'll just be the korban's still kosher, just won't count as a shtei halechem. You'll have to do shtei halechem with the other 2, and then you kind of are able to use all 4 animals. However, Rabbi Yechanan says to Reb Chanina tirasa, v'chi omim loy la'adam amoid v'chatei b'shvil shetizke. Do we say, why don't you go sin so that you can merit? Just go deliberately do zrikas adam shelo lishma, so that then you can do zrikas adam lishma and salvage all 4. Are we going to tell somebody seriously to do that? That when you have an opportunity to offer the shtei halechem, we're going to say, don't offer the shtei halechem, offer it shelo lishma? Why would we do that? After all, we learned in the Mishnah Masechta Zvachim, Eivari chata shenisav be'eivari ola. If you have the limbs of a korban chatas, so korban chatas, the limbs, the meat is meant to be eaten by the kohanim. Right? There's the emurim that are burnt on the mizbeach, and the meat, the basar, goes to the kohanim. And the pasuk says, "Lo saktiru mimenu ishel Hashem." That the drush is mimenu ishel Hashem, that a korban that the emurim have already been burnt on the mizbeach. Lo saktiru, don't burn the meat. So therefore, you have the eivari chatos, which are supposed to not be burnt on the mizbeach, but they get mixed together with eivari ola, which are supposed to be burnt on the mizbeach. So now you have a whole bunch of animal parts, some of which are supposed to be burnt on the mizbeach, some of which are forbidden to be burnt on the mizbeach. What do you do? Rabbi Eliezer, yitnu lemayle, burn them all. V'ra'ani as besar chatas lemayle, and I will view the meat of the chatas that is being burnt on the mizbeach, ki'ilu hi eitzim, as though it is mere wood. I'll just view it like it's wood. The Chacham say, to uber tzurasim v'yetzu leveis hasreifa, whereas the Chachamim say, well, this is a mess. We have all these animal parts that are mixed together. Some are supposed to be burned, some are not supposed to be burned. What can we do? We have to just wait until they become pasul belina, let them wait overnight. It comes the morning, they'll be pasul, and then we will simply burn them. Now, why should we have to wait till the morning and then burn them? Put them all on the mizbeach. Because after all, Lema, let us say, Amod v'chatei b'shvil shetizke. just put them all on top of the mizbeach, and sure, yeah, I know the meat of the chatas are not allowed to go on the mizbeach, but we're doing it for a reason. We're putting the meat on the mizbeach so that we could burn the limbs of the ola, which are supposed to be on the mizbeach. So we're sinning with the chatas meat, but in the interest of being able to merit with the ola meat. But we don't say that. We say, burn it the next day. So says the Gemara, Amod v'chate bechatos b'shvil shetizke bechatos. Amrinan. Look, when we say sin so that you can merit would be when they're one and the same. Sin with a chatas so you can merit with a chatas. Or in our case, sin with the kivsei atzeres and do the zrikas adam shelo lishmah so that you can merit to do the zrikas adam lishmah for these other kivsei atzeres. When it's the same korban, we can do it. Amod v'chate bechatas b'shvil shetizke ba'ola lo amina. But to say sin with the chatas so you can merit with the ola, two different korbanos, we're not going to do that. Uv'chada milsa mi amrinan. We'll affect the Gemara. One second. Even when they are the same thing, like two chatases or two kivsei atzereses, do we say since you can merit? V'atanya we learn in the Brisa kivsei atzeres or sheshachatan shelo lishman, kivsei atzeres that are slaughtered shelo lishman. Oh, sheshachatan bein lifnei zman and bein lacher zman, or they were slaughtered before Shavuos or after Shavuos. Hadam yizarik ve'abaso yochel. So do zrikas adam, but shelo l'shem kivsei atzeres rather as just a regular shlomim. Ve'abaso yochel, then you can eat the meat. Now, b'maisa Shabbos. Now, what if it was Shabbos and the kivsei atzeres, right? It was Shabbos as well as Shavuos, and the kivsei atzeres was slaughtered shelo lishma. So lo yizro. So in that case, don't do zrikas hadam, because at this point already, since the kivsei atzeres, usually only communal offerings would be docha Shabbos, like the Talmud shel Shachar, Talmud shel Ben Abayim, Musafin. But not individual. We don't offer individual korbanos on Shabbos or Yom Tov. So now in this case it was Shabbos and Shavuos. The kivsei atzeres was slaughtered shelo lishman, so they're no longer the kivsei atzeres. So in that case, don't do the zrikas adam on Shabbos. Vim zarek. Now, if you did do the zrikas adam, hurtza, okay, fine, it works. Laktir emurin la'erev. In that way, okay, you did the zrikas adam that evening. You'll be able to burn the emurin and then also eat the meat at night. Ve'amai, but why do we say don't do the zrikas adam? Right? We said that if it's Shavuos and it's Shabbos and the kivsei atzeres was slaughtered shelo lishman, so we said don't do the zrikas adam. Right? Because it's no longer korban sibor, don't do the zrikas adam. The zrikas adam was shelo, they were slaughtered shelo lishma. Right? They were slaughtered shelo lishma, and therefore they're no longer kivsei atzeres. So we say don't do the zrikas adam. The thing is, by not doing the zrikas adam, well then come shkia, the dam is going to become possible. You're going to lose the opportunity to do the zrikas adam, and if you lose the opportunity to zrikas adam, you also lose the opportunity to then burn the emurim that night, and you lose the opportunity to eat the korban that night. So lema, let's say amod chatei, let us sin and do the zrikas adam for the kivsei atzeres that were slaughtered shelo lishma, b'shvil shetizke, so that we can then burn the emurim that night and eat the meat that night without the dam, without the blood becoming puzzle at shkia. So, and for the Gemara, amor chate b'Shabbos k'dei shetizke b'Shabbos aminun. Sure, we'll say sin on Shabbos to merit on Shabbos. However, that's not what's going on here. Amod chate b'Shabbos k'dei shetizke b'chol lo aminun. We're not going to say do the zrikas adam on Shabbos so that you can burn the emurim and eat the meat after Shabbos. That we are not going to say. Okay. Uvitarte mile lo aminun. Now, frek the Gemara. So, is it true that when it's two different things, we don't say sin in order to merit? Right? For example, we had said earlier, don't burn the chatas meat in order to be able to burn the ola meat. But one second, friends, we're about to see an interesting scenario. You want me to tell you what it is? I'll tell you what it is, and then we'll read it in outside. And then I'll tell you what it is outside, then we'll read it inside. Friends, here's the scenario. You ready for the scenario? Here's the scenario. Remember the wine press? Masechta Avodah Zarah. We're not bringing any pictures now. We're gonna relate to the wine press more in an abstract way right now. There's an upper wine press and a lower wine press. The wine from the upper wine press flows to the lower wine press. Great. Givaldig. Now, in the upper wine press, there's a barrel of truma wine. Who can drink this barrel of truma wine, friends? Kohanim. Kohanim consume truma. Kohanim eat truma, in this case, drink truma. Now, here's the thing, friends. In the bottom part of the wine press, there was chulin wine. But not just any chulin wine, tamei chulin wine. Okay. Now we have to walk a tight rope. We have to be careful. Because while the truma wine is totally okay for kohanim, and the tamei chulin wine is also completely fine either for people who are tamei could drink it, or people who are not makbid to eat chulin b'tara, kilu. There isn't anything that's usur or anything per se with tamei wine. It's just, just like the truma wine, it's okay in certain contexts. The tamei chulin wine is also okay for tamei people, for people who are not makbid to eat chulin b'tara. But what we have to avoid, what we have to prevent, is the two wines getting mixed together. That is a bad combination. It's a bad combination because when chulin mixes with truma, it becomes meduma. Assuming that there's not enough chulin to be mevatel the truma, which is 100 parts to 1. So we're assuming that there's not enough chulin to be mevatel the truma. So what will happen is, if the truma gets mixed with the chulin, so it becomes what's called meduma, is a mixture with truma in it, which means it has to be treated as truma. The thing is, this chulin is tamei chulin, which means that it will make tamei meduma, and tamei meduma / tamei truma. There's you can burn it. You can get. I think it's mutar ba'ana, but I mean, you can't. Nobody could. You're basically going to lose all the wine. If the barrel of truma wine gets mixed together with the tamei chulin wine, forget it. So now what happens is, as fate would have it, the barrel of truma wine in the upper wine press breaks. And you have about 5 seconds to do something quick before that truma wine is going to leak into the tamei chulin wine, and it's going to be a disaster. Now here are your options, friends. Here are your options. Option number 1 is you can quickly, I said you have 5 seconds, maybe you have 1 minute, 60 seconds. You can quickly, like Superman or some fast superhero, run down to the lower wine press and grab a bucket, and before the stream of truma wine is going to land into the tamei chulin wine, you can quickly take a bucket and put it in place so that the truma wine will land in the bucket and not a drop will land in the tamei chulin wine, and you will be a hero and you will save the day. But there's a catch. The bucket in the lower wine press is tamei, which means that while you will prevent the truma from mixing with the tamei chulin, you will also be responsible for making the truma wine that is about to spill into or that's pouring into the lower vat, into the lower wine press. You will be responsible for making that truma wine tamei. Even though, it was about to land into some tamei wine, but now instead of landing into the tamei wine, it's landing into the bucket that you put there. So you're being mitamei that wine, that truma wine, and that's a problem. We don't want you to be metame truma. Better to let it drop into the tame chulin on its own and become tame that way, rather than fall into the bucket that you put there. Now that's one option. You could save the day, save all of the chulin wine from being ruined by putting a bucket there to catch the truma wine. Of course, the downside of that is you're going to essentially be responsible for being metame the truma wine. Now there's another option. Another option is you can run and get a tahor vessel in order to capture the truma wine that's flowing into the lower wine press. But it's going to take 2 minutes to get that bucket. Which means that by the time that you get to the lower wine press, all of the wine in the lower wine press has been ruined, because already half of the barrel of truma wine has already flowed into the tamei chulin. The tamei chulin is now tamei meduma. It's absolutely ruined. Maybe it might even be a big financial loss, a big mess. But you will be able to salvage with your tahor bucket some of the truma wine. And in that way, you're a hero. You're saving the day there. If you can save even a revius of that truma wine and prevent it from becoming tamei, either in the tamei bucket or by mixing in with the tamei chulin wine, if you can save the day with that you took 2 minutes to grab that tahor bucket, and it's too late to save everything, but you'll be able to save some of the truma wine, and you'll be a big hero. That is option number 2. So friends, we don't say sin in one regard in order to merit in another regard, but we learned in a Mishnah, Masechta Maisris, Chavis shel truma, if you have a barrel of truma, shenizbra b'gas elyona, and it's in the upper wine press, and it broke, and it's about to start streaming into the lower wine press, uvetachtona chulin tmein, and in the lower wine press there is chulin wine that is tamei, and we want to prevent the two wines from mixing. Modeh Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yeshua, both Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua agree. She'im yachol la'atzil mimenu revius b'tayra yatzil. Look, if you could do option B, take the 2 minutes, grab the tahor bucket, and you will be able, and you'll get to the wine press with enough time to save at least one revius of truma wine, and at least some of the truma wine you will be able to prevent from becoming tamei. You'll be able to keep it tahor. Even though all of the wine in the lower vat, all the tamei chulin wine is now tamei meduma wine, it's all thrown in the garbage, but you saved some of the truma, you're a hero. Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yoshua agree, do that. Save some of the truma wine. The imlav, now if you will be unable to, simply by the time you come back with the tahor bucket, all the truma wine is gone. You're not going to save even a drop of the truma wine. Forget it. So now the question is, okay, well, if we're not going to be able to save any of the truma wine, at least maybe we could save the tamei chulin wine. Let me take the tamei bucket. I'll catch the truma wine in it, and I'll be responsible for making the truma wine tamei, but it was going to be tamei anyways, right? When it falls into the tamei chulin, and by it having it fall into the bucket, I'll be able to save all of the tamei chulin wine, and tamei people and people who are not makbid on eating chulin b'tar, they can eat it. We could save it, right? So Rabbi Eliezer says, Rabbi Eliezer, no. Better that the truma wine should on its own just fall into the tamei chulin and become tamei that way, rather than become tamei by falling into the bucket that you put there, and you'll be responsible for being metame the wine. Don't do that. Rabbi Yeshua Omer, Af yitamena biyad. Rabbi Yeshua says this is not actually in the girsa of the Mishnayos, but says the Gemara. Rabbi Yeshua Omer says, Rabbi Yeshua, Af yitamena biyad. No, you can be metame. Put the bucket there. Rabbi Yeshua says take the tamei bucket, put it there, catch the truma wine, yeah, you'll be responsible for being mitame the truma wine. However, you will save all of that tamei chulin wine. So we see that Rabbi Yoshua is suggesting shtei, sin with the truma wine, kadesh yizke, in order to salvage the tahor tamei wine. So we have truma wine. We have, did I say tahor tamei wine? The chulin tamei wine, the tamei chulin wine. So we have truma wine. We have tamei chulin wine. We're saying sin with the truma wine in order to salvage the tamei chulin wine. So we see that even with two different things, we're saying sin in order to merit. The Gemara says, "Shani yosem to truma ka'azla." To which the Gemara says that's not really a good proof, because in that particular scenario, it's unique in that this truma wine was about to become tamei anyways. It was about to fall in to this other tamei wine. It was going to become tamei anyways. So therefore, in that case, Rabbi Yeshua says, look, at the end of the day, it was going to become tamei anyways. You may as well save the tamei chulin wine. And that's why he says, sin with the truma wine in order to save the sin with the truma wine to save the chulin wine, because it was going to become tamei anyways. You're not really making that much of a difference by putting the bucket there. So it's unique to that case because it was going to become tamei anyways. In general, would we say sin with, for example, a chatas in order to merit with the ola? Not necessarily. Friends, now we get up to the third section of today's daf, slaughtering kivsei atzeres shelo lishmah. That sounds exciting. Says the Gemara. Kivsei Rav Yitzchak, when Rav Yitzchak came from Eretz Yisrael to Babble, Tani, he taught kivsei atzeres sheshachten shelo kimitzvason, that if kivsei atzeres are slaughtered shelo lishmah, psulin, they are psulin. V'tu b'tzurasin v'yetzu leveis ha'sreifa, wait until they become pasul belina, and then burn them, they're pasul. Amar le Rav Nachman says, Rav Yitzchak, mar demakish lu lechatas tani psulin. Okay, you compare the kivsei atzeres to korban chatas, therefore you say psulin. Why does he compare kivsei atzeres to korban chatas? Because it says, I'll read you the pasuk by kivsei atzeres. It says, "Vasisim sir izim echad lechatas u'shnei kvasim b'nei shana lezevach hashlomim." Because immediately before the kivsei atzeres is the korban chatas, right? There's a million korbanos that we bring, and right before the kivsei atzeres is the korban chatas, the chatas goat. So therefore, we're juxtaposing the kivsei atzeres to korban chatas, and as we know from the first Mishnah, Masechta Zvachim, korban chatas shelo lishmah is pasul, and therefore we want to say that also the kivsei atzeres shelo lishmah is pasul. That is what Rav Yitzchak says. However, says Rav Nachman, Tanadvei Levi, the Tana by the story by the Medrash of Levi, to Gomar, that they taught Shalmei Chova Mishalmei Nedava, that they learn the halacha of Shalmei Chova vis-a-vis Shelo Lishma from Shalmei Nedava. Just like if I bring a korban shlomim, Shelo Lishma, of course only chatas and korban pesach Shelo Lishma are psulin. So a korban shlomim Shelo Lishma is ksher. So Tanadvei Levi learns out that kivsei atzeres Shelo Lishma are ksherin, just like a regular shlamim, right? Because kivsei atzeres, of course, are shalmei tzibur. So shalmei tzibur, shelo lishma, are just like shalmei nidava, regular shlam shelo lishma, and they are ksherin according to Tana Devei Levi. And therefore, shalmei nidava, tani ksherin. The Tani Levi that Levi taught, ushar shalmei nazir, sheshachtan shelo kimitzvasan, that the shlamim of a nazir that was slaughtered shelo lishma. In this case, I'm going to read the parentheses because Rashi seems to have the parentheses. Ksherin, it's kosher that the shalmei nazir shelo lishma is ksher. For the other b'al b'shem chova, of course, it's not going to work as a chova. It won't fulfill the obligation of the shalmei nazir. Right? Of course, when the nazir, when his naziris is over, so he brings a chatas, an ola, and a shlamim. With the shlamim, he brings asal matzis, he brings chalis, he brings rikikin, There's also the Zroa B'Shela. It's an El Nazir. It's a Shlomim ram. So we're talking about that Shlomim. So Shalmi Nazir Sheshchotin Shalo Ki Mitzvasan. So Shalmi Nazir that was slaughtered Shalo Lishmah. Ksherin, it's nonetheless kosher. V'lo Olu B'Alim Shem Chova. Yet it's not going to count as the Shalmi Nazir. V'nechon Liyom V'Layla could be eaten for that day and the following night, because the Shalmi Nazir, right, as the pasuk says, not the pasuk, the Mishnah in Ezu Mekomen that we learned in Masechta Zvachim, Hatoda ve'el Nazir, and it says there Nechon liyom v'layla. So Nechon liyom v'layla ve'ein tunin lo lechem v'lo zroa, and because it was shelo lishma, there's not going to be the sal matzis, and there is not any zroa b'shela. Now, even though if we look at the pasuk by Nazir, which describes this korban, what does it say? The pasuk says, I'm reading, V'ikriv es korbanu la'Hashem, keves ben shnoso tomim echad le'ola, v'chavsa achas b'shnoso tmima lechatos, v'ayel echad tomim l'shlamim. So we see that by Nazir, the shlamim is juxtaposed with the chatos, and yet, Tana Devei Levi is not saying that, okay, well, the El Nazir is pasul shelo lishma since it's juxtaposed to chatas, nisht. He says that the El Nazir, which is a chova, that a Shalmei chova is being learnt out instead from Shalmei Nidava, and that is going to be kosher afilu shelo lishma. Meizvei, we have a contradiction against Rav Yitzchok. Osham ben Shana, that if you have an Osham ben Shana be'evi ben shtei, and you bought a 2-year-old Osham ben shtei be'evi ben Shana, or if it's a 2-year-old Osham, then you bought a 1-year-old Osham psulin. And you have to burn them. What's this talking about? When it comes to a korban Osham, so I feel like there's this like general vibe that when it comes to korban asham, that it is a 2-year-old ram. It's not totally incorrect. The thing is that there are 5 ashams, also from Ezu Mekomen. Let's see, wait. Elu ein asham. So asham gzelos, asham meilos, asham shivcha charufa, asham nozer, asham mitzara. Then also asham tali. But we're not counting that. So there are basically 5 ashams. Again, asham, what do we say? Elu ein asham. Asham gzelos, asham meilos. Okay, asham gzelos, asham meilos, asham shivcha charufa. Those 3 out of 5 are a 2-year-old ram. Asham Nazir and Asham Mitzora, however, are a 1-year-old, I believe, male sheep. It says keves in the pasuk. Keves ben shnaso. 1-year-old sheep. So, some ashams are meant to be a 1-year-old sheep. Some ashams are meant to be a 2-year-old sheep. Kilo 1-year-old in its first year, 2-year-old in its second year. And what we just said, that if an asham mitzora or an asham nazir, which is meant to be 1 year, instead you brought a 2-year-old sheep, or a asham gzeos, asham milos, asham shiv charufa that was supposed to be a 2-year-old sheep, but a 1-year-old sheep was brought, giferlach, pasul. Again, Mezveh Asham ben Shana, what was meant to be a 1-year-old Asham, Vevi ben Shtein, but a 2-year-old Asham was brought instead. Ben Shtein, Vevi ben Shana, what was supposed to be a 2-year-old Asham, but instead a 1-year-old Asham was brought. Psulin, and you burn it. No good, nothing to do with it. Aval, however, Olas Nazir, the Ola of a Nazir, the Olas Yoledes, or the Ovala of Yoledes, the Olas Mitzora, Shayu B'nei Shtei Shanim, that while they were supposed to, I actually didn't look these up, usually I would have, it's Friday afternoon, I'm tight on time. What time is it? It's 3:05, Shabbos is probably like 5 o'clock. I need to finish recording this, edit it, upload it. I also need to learn, my goal is to learn half of tomorrow's daf and record that, not edit it, but at least get it recorded before Shabbos. It's a little bit, what's it called? Optimistic, but I need to just record something of tomorrow's daf, otherwise I lose my lead, which would be horrible. So I'm optimistic and I'm determined to be able to at least record something for tomorrow. Otherwise I lose my lead. Just having something for tomorrow means I did something. It means that Sunday is going to be long. But it's important to do something for tomorrow, otherwise I lose my lead. And you know how long it takes to get back a lead. Months. Anyways, where are we? So, okay, fine. Right. So I was giving you an excuse for why I didn't look up what I normally would, but the context seems to be pretty clear that the olas nazir, olas yuledis, olas mitzorah should be a 1-year-old sheep. Sha'ayu b'nei shtei shanim, but instead a 2-year-old sheep was offered instead. V'shachatan, and it was slaughtered. A 2-year-old sheep, ksherin, they are nonetheless kosher, since an ola in general, an olas nedava can be a 2-year-old sheep. Klala shel davar, kol akosher be'olas nedava, kosher be'olas chova. Okay, so anything that would be kosher for a voluntary ola offering is also kosher for an obligatory ola offering, like the olas nazir, olas yuledes, olas mitzorah. And we're going to also say the same thing by the shlamim, that anything that is kosher by the voluntary shlamim offering is also kosher by the shalmei tzibur, i.e. the kivsei atzeres. V'chol apostle b'chatas, possible by asham, and anything that's possible by a chatas is also possible by an asham. Of course, a chatas has to be 1-year-old; it can't be 2-year-old, and therefore a asham that is meant to be 1-year-old cannot be 2 years old. Chutz mi shelo lishmo. The only difference is that an asham shelo lishmo is kosher, whereas a chatas shelo lishmo, as we know, is possible. Although, of course, chever trivia, who says that asham also? Right? He says kachatas ka asham, and he compares chatas and asham just like chatas shelo lishmo is possible. Also, asham shelo lishmo. Who can remember? Yell it louder. I don't hear you. Rabbi Eliezer. Hi Tana Devei Levi Hu. So the Gemara just answers. I mean, you bring this as a question against Rabbi Yitzchak to say, you see, a shalmei chova should be able to be learned out from shalmei nedava. We shouldn't be juxtaposing it with the chatos. But we say, well, that price could just literally be Tana Devei Levi Hu. Yeah, we know it argues on Rabbi Yitzchak. That's their machlokas. Tashma Kamanir, the Tani Levi, that Levi taught Asham Nazir V'Asham Mitzorah Sheshachatan Shelo Lishman Ksherim, that the Asham of a Nazir, the Asham of Mitzorah, when is there an Asham of a Nazir? The Asham of a Nazir is brought when a Nazir becomes Tameh. Right? The end of a Nazir's Nazirus, he brings a Chatos, an Ola, and a Shlamim, as we were talking about earlier. However, if during the course of his Nazirus, he becomes Tameh Tumas Hames, so he's Tameh for 7 days, he deals with that. When he's done being Tameh, so then, in addition to having to start all over, he first brings an Asham Nazir, as well as 2 birds. One is a Chatas, one is an Ola, if I'm not mistaken. Now, so that's the Asham Nazir. So Asham Nazir v'Asham Mitzorah, Sheshchat and Shelo Lishman, that were slaughtered Shelo Lishman, not as an Asham Nazir or an Asham Mitzorah. Ksherim, they are nonetheless Ksherim for the Adul L'Bailam Shimchova. They're just, of course, not going to work for the thing that they were supposed to work for. They're not going to be the Asham Nazir or the Asham Mitzorah, since they were slaughtered Shelo Lishman. Shachatan Mechusar Zman B'Bailim. But what if the Asham Nazir was slaughtered before he was done being Tameh? Right? He's Tameh for we're talking an Asham Nazir, as we said, is if he becomes Tameh, so he's Tameh for 7 days. So if he brings the Asham Nazir before he's done with the 7 days of Tumah, Oshahayu b'nei shtei shanim, or the Asham was a 2-year-old Asham when it should have been a 1-year-old Asham, v'shachatan, and it was slaughtered, in that case, psulin. Now, the Gemara v'imisa, if what Tana Devei Levi is saying is correct, that you can learn out, right? V'imisa ligami mishlamim, right? If we're saying that we can learn out chovas from nedavas, so then why don't we learn out these ashams, which are chovas, asham nazir, asham tzara, chovas? So we had said if it's supposed to be 1 year, it is supposed to be 1 year. If it's 2 years, then it's puzzle. But why not learn out from shalmei nedava, where if you bring a 2-year-old sheep, it's kosher. So, and for the Gemara, shlamim mishlamim gamar, asham mishlamim lo gamar. We'll learn out Shalmei Chova from Shalmei Nedava, we're not going to learn out Asham Chova from Shalmei Nedava. V'i Gomar Shlomim B'Shlomim, Ligmar Nami Asham Asham. But for the Gemara, okay, fine. So if we're going to learn out Shalmei Chova from Shalmei Nedava, so let's learn out Asham Chova from Asham. Well, let's learn out different types of Ashams from each other. Ligmar Nami Asham Asham Naziv Asham Mitzorah. Let's learn out Asham Nazir and Asham Mitzvah from other types of Ashams. Asham Gizelus and Asham Mi'ilos. I'm going to change the girsa a little bit for the next few words. V'lahadar Nami Asham Gizelus v'Asham Mi'ilos Ligmar Me'Asham Nazir v'Asham Mitzvah. And then also vice versa. Okay, you should be able to learn out Asham Gizelus and Asham Mi'ilos from Asham Nazir and Asham Mitzvah. Amr of Shimi bar Ashi says of Shimi bar Ashi, "Don and davar shelo be'achshero midavar shelo be'achshero, vein dam davar shelo be'achshero midavar shebe'achshero." Well, the Gemara says, look. What were we learning out between Shalmei Chova and Shalmei Nedava? Well, by a Shalmei Nedava, of course you should be slaughtering it lishmah. If you slaughtered it shelo lishmah, kilo voluntary shlom, it's nonetheless b'diavad, it's kosher. And we're saying that we learn out Shalmei Chova from Shalmei Nedava to say the same thing. That obviously you should be slaughtering the kivsei atzeres as kivsei atzeres. If you slaughtered it for something else, okay, just like by the Shalmei Nedava, b'diavad it's kosher. Here also b'diavad it's kosher. So davar shelo we're learning out davar shelo be'achshero, midavar shelo be'achshero. The thing is, if you want to say, let's learn out the Asham Gzeos, Asham Me'ilos from Asham Nazir and Asham Mitzorah and vice versa, it's to say that, well, Asham Nazir and Asham Mitzorah are supposed to be 1 year. What if you offered a 2-year-old sheep? Well, Asham Gzeos and Asham Milos is 2 years old, so let's say it's okay. No, but it's very different. Because the Asham Nazir and Asham Mitzorah when it's 2 years old is wrong, whereas the Asham Gzeos and Asham Milos when it's 2 years old is right. And therefore we're not going to learn out something wrong from something that is right. Learn out something is wrong from something that's wrong, right? If we say, look, the halacha is by voluntary shlomim. If you made a mistake and it was, if you did shalom lishmah, it's none, okay, but David it's kosher. We could say the same thing also by Shalmei Chova. But we are not going to say that since a Asham Gzelos and Asham Milos is supposed to be 2 years old, well then, if you offered a Asham Nazir and Asham Mitzorah 2 years, which is the wrong way to do it, it's going to be kosher, since if you do it with the other ones where it's the right way to do it, it's kosher. No, those are apples and oranges. You can't compare that way. Below, but 1 second, is that really true? Valtani, we learn in a brayso. Minayin the yotzei shem Allah lo yered. How do we know, as we know from Masechta Zvachim already, that if you have a korban that was taken out of the azara, therefore it's possible, but then it's put on top of the mizbech, you can leave it there? Shari yotzei kosher b'bama. Well, since after a yotzei, right, by a bama, which is entirely outside of the Beis Hamikdash, korbanos like Sharon, so clearly yotzei is kosher by a bama. So then we say, you know what? Also, if it's yotzei from the azara, and then you bring it back into the azara and you put it on the mizbech, you can leave it there. So here we have a scenario where this was yotzei and puzzle, whereas by a bama it's yotzei and completely kosher, and yet we're learning them out from each other. And for the Gemara, we're not really learning them out from each other. Tana azos Torah sa'ola riba samachle. Really, what we were learning out from is Zos Torah Sa'ola, Torah Achas L'chola Olim, Shem Olulu Yerdu, as we know from Masechta Zvachim already, that really where it's being learning out is from this pasuk, that Zos Torah Sa'ola, the Torah Achas, it's one Torah for everything that goes on top of this Bech, that you leave them there, you don't have to take them down. And therefore, even if it's Yotzei and you put it on top of this Bech, you can leave it there. It's not being learned out from the Bama. Friends, that was Daf Mem Ches of Masechta Menachos. Friends, on Daf Mem Ches, we learned about two kivsei atzeres for 4 shtei halechems. Oh boy. And what to do in that scenario? We said that the students of Rav Chizda wanted to say it must be Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon, who's the author of that brayso, which talks about 2 of them will be for the shtei halechem, and then 2 of them you'll be pod to them. It has to be according to Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon, who says that all of them are kadosh with this kedushas damim, because if it's Rebbe, it becomes way too complicated, because 2 of them are kedushas akuf, 2 of them are kedushas damim. Rav Chizda said, you can even say that it's Rebbe. Meaning, you'll just be poda the kedushas dam ones in the azara, and it's not an issue of chulam bazar since they're already in the azara. We talked about 4 kivsei atzeres for 2 shtei halechems. So we suggested doing the zrika for this first 2 shelo lishmah, so you could do the zrika for the other 2 lishmah. And we had questioned, do we really say shtei in order to be zoche, right? Sin in order to merit? I think we said that in this kind of a context where it's all within the same context of kivsei atzeres in this case, it should be okay. And finally, we talked about slaughtering kivsei atzeres shelo lishmah. Rabbi Yitzchak had said it's possible because he compares it, the pasuk juxtaposes it with a chatas, and therefore chatas, of course, shelo lishmah is possible, so therefore also the kivsei atzeres shelo lishmah is possible. Levi, or the Tana Dvei Levi, said that it is kosher because we learn out Shalmei Chova, which the Shalmei Tzibur, Shalmei Chova from Shalmei Nedava, and Shelo Lishma is kosher there. So also Shelo Lishma is kosher by kivsei atzeres. Friends, that was Daf Memches, Daf 48 of Masechta Menachos. Hope you enjoyed. Cheers.